In the gleaming conference room of Morrison Associates, a hardworking marketing professional was about to deliver the presentation of her career. What started as a routine promotion meeting took a shocking turn when she came face to face with betrayal from her closest friend. Sarah Williams wasn't your typical corporate employee. For 3 years, she had built genuine client relationships through meticulous strategy development, known for her unwavering loyalty and trust. When she encountered Jessica, presenting her stolen ideas with calculated precision, she had no idea. She was walking into an orchestrated ambush. What began as pursuing a deserved promotion would become entrepreneurial transformation that changed Atlanta's business landscape forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Atlanta skyline. As Sarah Williams adjusted her Northwestern University diploma on the wall behind her desk, 3 years. 3 years of arriving early, staying late, and pouring her heart into every campaign that crossed her desk at Morrison Associates. The promotion to senior marketing director wasn't just a career move, it was validation of everything she'd worked toward since graduation. Coffee delivery for the future director, Jessica Parker announced, sliding a steaming cup across Sarah's desk with that infectious smile that had charmed professors and clients alike since their college days. Extra shot of espresso. You'll need the energy for final prep. Sarah looked up from her laptop, where she'd been fine-tuning her presentation slides for the 3rd time that morning. The comprehensive marketing proposal represented months of meticulous work client retention strategies that had boosted account satisfaction by 37%, innovative digital campaigns that had exceeded ROI projections by 40%, and a strategic vision for the department's future that she'd been developing for over a year. You're a lifesaver, Jess. I don't know what I'd do without you. Jessica perched on the edge of Sarah's desk, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against the wood.
Ow!
So walk me through it one more time. I want to make sure you haven't missed anything crucial. Sarah's eyes lit up as she launched into her presentation outline. This was what she loved most about their friendship, Jessica's genuine interest in her success. The way she'd always been Sarah's biggest cheerleader since their sophomore year at Northwestern when they'd been randomly assigned as roommates. The foundation is built on 3 pillars, Sarah explained, gesturing at her notes. Client retention through personalized service. Innovative digital strategies that adapt to market changes and team development that create sustainable growth. The Henderson account alone saw a 42% increase in engagement after we implemented the community-focused approach. Jessica leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. The Henderson account, that's the restaurant chain, right? How did you get them to trust such a dramatic shift in their marketing approach? It took months of relationship building, Sarah said, her voice carrying the quiet pride of someone who'd earned every success through genuine effort. I spent time in their locations, talked to their managers, understood their customer base. When I presented the strategy, I wasn't just selling them marketing services. I was showing them I understood their business. Brilliant. Jessica's smile seemed to brighten. And the other accounts? Software company TechFlow? How did you convince them to increase their budget by 60%? Sarah felt a flutter of warmth at Jessica's enthusiasm. This was why their friendship had survived the transition from college to career, from Chicago to Atlanta. Jessica understood the nuances of their industry, asked the right questions, celebrated Sarah's victories as if they were her own. Across the office, Mike Johnson glanced up from his computer screen, his weathered face creased with concern. He'd been with Morrison Associates for 5 years, long enough to recognize the subtle dynamics that newcomers missed. Jessica's questions weren't unusual. Colleagues discussed strategies all the time, but something about the way she extracted information, the careful precision of her inquiries, made him uneasy. Sarah's really got something special with that presentation, he'd mentioned to his wife the night before. Just hope she's not being too trusting. Now, watching Jessica lean closer to Sarah's desk, Mike couldn't shake the feeling that his concerns were justified. He'd seen this before, the calculated interest disguised as friendship, the way information could be weaponized in corporate environments. But Sarah's open, trusting nature made her vulnerable to the very manipulation she'd never consider employing herself. The tech flow expansion came from understanding their growth trajectory, Sarah continued, oblivious to Mike's watchful gaze. They weren't just looking for marketing services, they needed a partner who could scale with them. I developed a 3-phase approach that aligned with their product launches and market expansion plans. Jessica nodded slowly, her mental wheels turning. And Kate knows about your direct relationships with these executives. Some of them, do you know how Kate Ishii prefers to focus on the big picture rather than the details? Sarah's tone carried a note of mild frustration. Sometimes. I think she doesn't fully appreciate the relationship-building aspect of account management. Ham. Jessica's expression remained neutral, but Mike caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Well, your presentation tomorrow is going to blow them away. I can feel it. The morning progressed with its usual rhythm: client calls, strategy sessions, the comfortable buzz of a successful marketing firm. But beneath the surface, currents of ambition and competition flowed in directions Sarah couldn't see. She'd always operated on the assumption that success was a collaborative effort, that lifting others up ultimately benefited everyone. The possibility that someone might view her achievements as opportunities to be exploited rather than celebrated never occurred to her trusting nature. During lunch, Kate Stevens called both candidates into her office for preliminary discussions. Sarah went first, her presentation polished and her confidence evident as she outlined her vision for the department's future. Kate listened with the distracted attention of someone already mentally crafting her decision, asking surface-level questions about budget projections and timeline implementations. Your work has been exceptional, Sarah, Kate acknowledged, her voice carrying the perfunctory tone of someone delivering expected praise. The promotion decision will be announced Friday morning. An hour later, Jessica emerged from the same office, her demeanor impossible to read. But Mike, who'd been observing from the break room, noticed something that made his stomach tighten with unease. Jessica's discussion with Kate had lasted nearly twice as long as Sarah's, and when she left, Kate's expression held a thoughtfulness that hadn't been present during Sarah's meeting. How did it go? Sarah asked, when Jessica returned to her desk. Good, I think. Kate asked some interesting questions about client relationship management and strategic networking. Jessica's smile was perfectly calibrated, confident but not arrogant, hopeful but not presumptuous. She seemed particularly interested in how I'd handle the executive-level interactions. Sarah felt a small pang of concern. Those were exactly the areas where she sometimes felt less confident than networking events. The golf course conversations, the subtle art of corporate schmoozing that came so naturally to Jessica. But she pushed the worry aside. Her work spoke for itself. Results mattered more than politics. That evening, at their traditional Thursday dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Buckhead, Sarah found herself sharing more details about her presentation, strategy than she'd intended. The wine, Jessica's enthusiastic questions, and the comfortable intimacy of their friendship loosened her usual professional discretion. The key insight, Sarah explained, gesturing with her fork, is that these clients don't just want marketing services, they want partnership. They want to feel understood, valued, like their business matters to us personally. Jessica refilled Sarah's wine glass, her attention focused with laser intensity. And you've documented all these relationship dynamics, the personal preferences, the decision-making processes. Of course, it's all in my client profiles, birthdays, family situations, business concerns, growth goals. That's how you build real relationships. Sarah's voice carried the passion that had driven her success, the genuine care for her clients that set her apart from more transactional colleagues. You're going to be amazing tomorrow, Jessica said, raising her glass. To the future senior marketing director. They clinked glasses as the Atlanta skyline glittered beyond the restaurant windows. Sarah felt the familiar warmth of anticipation, the sense that everything was finally falling into place. Tomorrow would be the culmination of 3 years of dedicated work, of proving herself worthy of advancement in a competitive industry. But as they left the restaurant, Jessica's phone buzzed with a text message. Her response was quick, practiced, and Sarah didn't notice the slight smile that crossed her friend's face as she typed back. Mike's words from earlier that day echoed in the evening air. Just hope she's not being too trusting. The stage was set for Friday morning's announcement, the pieces carefully arranged by forces Sarah couldn't see. Her presentation was ready, her confidence intact, her trust and friendship absolute. The perfect storm was gathering, and she was walking directly into its path. In less than 12 hours, everything would change. Base 25 minutes. Every question answered with specificity and confidence. As Sarah gathered her materials, she caught Jessica's encouraging smile from the back of the room, where the candidates had been asked to observe each other's presentations. That smile provided the final boost of confidence she needed. Excellent work, Sarah, Kate said with professional approval. Jessica, you're up. Sarah settled into her observer chair, ready to support her friend through what she knew would be a stellar presentation. Jessica approached the front of the room with the polished confidence of someone comfortable, commanding attention. Thank you, Kate. What I want to share with you today is a vision for client relationship excellence that goes beyond traditional account management. The first slide appeared, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The framework looked familiar. 3. Foundational elements that mirrored her own strategic approach, but with different terminology. Partnership integration, strategic adaptation, leadership development. The Henderson account illustrates this perfectly, Jessica continued smoothly. Through deep relationship building with their management team, we identified opportunities that traditional marketing firms miss. I spent considerable time in their locations, building trust with their operational staff, understanding their customer dynamics at the ground level. Sarah's hands gripped her notepad. Those were her strategies, her approaches, her months of relationship building. Jessica spoke with such authority, such ownership, that for a moment Sarah questioned her own memory. The result? A 42% increase in engagement metrics and measurable foot traffic improvements across all locations. But more importantly, Henderson now views us as true business partners rather than just service providers. The executives were leaning forward now, impressed by Jessica's apparent strategic insight. Sarah watched in growing horror as her trusted friend continued presenting strategy after strategy that they'd discussed just hours before. TechFlow's 60% budget increase didn't happen by accident, Jessica explained. Advancing to the next slide. It required understanding their growth trajectory and positioning ourselves as scalable partners. My three-phase approach aligned perfectly with their product launches and market expansion timeline. Three-phase approach. Sarah's three-phase approach. The same terminology, the same strategic framework, the same client-specific insights that Sarah had spent months developing. But Jessica wasn't just stealing Sarah's strategist, she was improving on the presentation. Where Sarah had focused on results and methodology, Jessica emphasized her relationships with C-suite executives, her networking capabilities, her vision for elevated client engagement at the highest levels. Leadership in this role requires more than tactical execution, Jessica concluded, her voice carrying the authority of someone born to command rooms like this. It requires strategic vision, executive-level relationship management, and the ability to position our firm as indispensable to our clients' growth. That's the future I see for this department. The presentation ended to enthusiastic applause. Sarah sat frozen, her mind struggling to process what she'd just witnessed. Months of her work, her insights, her client relationships presented with such seamless confidence that even she almost believed Jessica had developed these strategies independently. Kate's announcement came with bureaucratic efficiency. After careful consideration, I'm pleased to announce that Jessica Parker will be our new Senior Marketing Director. Strategic vision and leadership potential make her the ideal candidate to take this department forward. The room erupted in congratulations. Sarah remained seated, shock rendering her immobile as colleagues shook Jessica's hand and offered praise for her brilliant presentation. The betrayal was so complete, so professionally executed, that she couldn't immediately formulate a response. Jessica approached with arms extended for a hug, her expression a perfect mask of gracious victory. Sarah, I'm so sorry. You presented beautifully. I hope we can work together too. We need to talk. Sarah's voice cut through Jessica's performance. Low and controlled, but carrying an edge that made Jessica's smile falter slightly. In the hallway outside the conference room, away from celebrating colleagues, Sarah finally found her voice. Those were my strategies, Jessica. My client relationships, my frameworks, my three-phase approach, everything. Jessica's mask slipped. For just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating beneath the friendly surface. Then she laughed a sound that would haunt Sarah's memory for months to come. Oh, Sarah. Jessica's voice dripped with condescending amusement. I weren't qualified anyway. Maybe if you spent less time buried in spreadsheets and more time actually networking with people who matter, you'd understand how business really works. The words hit like physical blows. Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her feet as 7 years of friendship crumbled in a single sentence. Behind them, Mike Johnson stood frozen in the doorway, having witnessed the entire exchange. His expression reflected the horror Sarah felt, but couldn't yet fully process. Congratulations on your promotion, Sarah managed, her voice steady despite the devastation spreading through her chest. She walked toward the bathroom on legs that felt disconnected from her body, leaving Jessica standing in the hallway with victory turning to ash in her mouth. Sarah's bathroom refuge lasted exactly 7 minutes before the trembling started. She gripped the marble sink until her knuckles went white, staring at her reflection, while Jessica's words echoed like shrapnel in her mind. You weren't qualified anyway. The woman in the mirror looked familiar but foreign. Professional blazer, still crisp, makeup still perfect, but something fundamental had shifted behind her eyes. The weekend descended like a fog of disbelief. Sarah's midtown apartment, usually her sanctuary, felt suffocating as she replayed every conversation, every shared strategy session, every moment of trust she'd extended to Jessica over the past 3 years. Her phone buzzed with congratulatory texts for Jessica's promotion from mutual colleagues, each notification a fresh reminder of her humiliation. Saturday morning, she found herself scrolling through 7 years of photos on her phone. There was Jessica at Sarah's Northwestern graduation, beaming with pride. Jessica helping Sarah move to Atlanta, unpacking boxes and assembling furniture. Jessica celebrating Sarah's first major account win with champagne and genuine excitement. Or what Sarah had believed was genuine. Now she saw the subtle signs she'd missed. The way Jessica's smile sometimes didn't reach her eyes when Sarah shared professional victories. The carefully phrased questions that seemed supportive but were actually intelligence gathering. The times Jessica had deflected Sarah's praise with comments like, "You're too generous," or "I'm sure anyone could have done it." God, I was so stupid, Sarah whispered to her empty apartment, her voice cracking on the last word. By Sunday evening, she couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The betrayal had awakened something deeper, recognition of patterns she'd ignored her entire adult life. How many times had she given more than she received? How many relationships had she sustained through her own emotional labor while others took without reciprocating? Monday morning's alarm felt like a death knell. Sarah called in sick for the first time in 2 years, her voice hoarse as she lied to the receptionist about stomach flu. The thought of facing Jessica in that corner office, of pretending everything was normal, made her physically nauseous. By Tuesday afternoon, Amanda Williams had driven the 4 hours from Nashville, arriving unannounced with grocery bags and the fierce protectiveness that only younger sisters possess. She took one look at Sarah and washed hair, same clothes from the weekend, empty takeout containers scattered across the coffee table land, went into crisis mode. Okay, what happened? Amanda demanded, setting down Chinese food and positioning herself directly across from Sarah on the couch. And don't give me some corporate bullshit about professional disappointment. I know what you look like when you're genuinely devastated. The story poured out in fragments. Sarah's voice broke multiple times as she described Jessica's presentation. The casual cruelty of her dismissal, the realization that months of friendship had been strategic manipulation. Amanda listened with the focused intensity of someone trained to handle pediatric emergencies. Her nurse's instincts recognizing trauma that went beyond professional setbacks. "That manipulative bitch," Amanda said quietly when Sarah finished. "I never liked her." "What?" Sarah looked up, startled. "You never said anything? Because you were happy. And I didn't want to be the paranoid sister who criticized your friends." Amanda's voice carried years of suppressed observation. "But she always made everything about her. Remember your birthday dinner last year? She spent 20 minutes talking about her promotion possibilities, while you sat there nodding and asking supportive questions. Then when you mentioned your own career goals, she changed the subject." Sarah's mind reeled as she processed this. Perspective. Amanda had seen what Sarah's loyalty had blinded her to, the one-sided nature of the relationship. The subtle ways Jessica had positioned herself as the star while casting Sarah as the supporting character. Tuesday evening brought an unexpected visitor. Mike Johnson stood at Sarah's door holding coffee and wearing the uncomfortable expression of someone delivering. "Bad news out of moral obligation. It's been debating whether to tell you this," he said, settling onto Sarah's couch. "But you deserve to know what's been happening." His revelations were systematic and devastating. Jessica had been positioning herself for months, scheduling lunch meetings with Kate while Sarah worked late on client campaigns. She'd been building relationships with executives at major accounts, presenting herself as the strategic mind behind successful campaigns. Most damaging of all, she'd been subtly undermining Sarah's reputation through carefully placed comments about her execution focus versus strategic thinking. "The Henderson presentation you gave Jessica last week?" Mike's voice was gentle but firm. "She used your client analysis almost word for word in her preliminary meeting with Kate. Even mentioned the specific conversations you'd had with their management team like she'd been there herself." Sarah felt something break inside her chest, not just her heart, but her fundamental trust in her own judgment. How had she been so completely deceived? How had she missed such calculated manipulation from someone she considered family? "I should have said something earlier," Mike continued, his guilt evident. "But I kept hoping I was wrong, that maybe I was reading too much into office politics." Wednesday morning, Amanda forced Sarah into the shower, then sat her down at the kitchen table with scrambled eggs and coffee. "Eat," she commanded. "And then we're going to talk about what comes next. I can't go back there, Amanda. Can't work for her, pretend everything's normal, smile while she takes credit for my work. Then don't." Amanda's voice carried the practical certainty that had made her an excellent pediatric nurse. "You're talented, you're ethical, and you've got more integrity in your little finger than Jessica has in her entire body. Maybe it's time to stop letting other people define your worth." For the first time in days, Sarah felt something other than despair. It was small and fragile, but it felt like possibility. Like maybe hitting rock bottom meant there was nowhere to go but up. Outside her apartment window, Atlanta hummed with the energy of ambition and opportunity. Sarah watched the city move forward, while she remained frozen in betrayal's aftermath. But Amanda's words echoed with growing resonance. Maybe it was time to stop letting other people define her worth. The question was whether she had the courage to find out what that looked like. Wednesday morning arrived with the inevitability of a reckoning Sarah could no longer postpone. She dressed carefully her best navy suit, the one that made her feel competent and professional as if armor could protect her from what awaited at Morrison Associates. Amanda had driven back to Nashville the night before, but not before, extracting a promise that Sarah would document everything and consider her options beyond simply enduring. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt like ascending to her own execution. Sarah's reflection in the polished steel doors showed a woman who looked composed on the surface, but her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her briefcase strap. The familiar ding of arrival seemed to echo with finality. Jessica was already in the corner office that had been Sarah's goal for 3 years. Through the glass walls, Sarah could see her former friend. She reminded herself arranging personal items on the mahogany desk, framed photo of Jessica with some executives from the company retreat, a small succulent plant, a brass nameplate that read Jessica Parker, Senior Marketing Director in elegant script. Sarah. Jessica's voice carried across the open office space with performative warmth. "Could you come in for a minute? I'd love to discuss how we can work together moving forward." The one-on-one meeting felt like psychological warfare disguised as professional courtesy. Jessica sat behind the desk with practiced authority, her smile perfectly calibrated to suggest magnanimous leadership. She'd already rearranged the office furniture, moved the client relationship chart Sarah had meticulously maintained, replaced Sarah's organizational systems with her own preferences. "I know this transition might feel awkward," Jessica began, her tone suggesting she was being remarkably gracious under the circumstances. "But I really value your execution capabilities. Your attention to detail will be invaluable in supporting the department's strategic initiatives." Supporting, the word landed like a slap. 3 years of building client relationships, developing innovative campaigns, driving measurable results, reduced to supporting someone else's strategic vision. Sarah felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. "I've prepared some initial assignments that will help you transition into your new role," Jessica continued, sliding a folder across the desk. "Mostly data compilation, client contact updates, some administrative coordination for the Henderson account expansion." Sarah opened the folder and felt her stomach drop. These weren't assignments, they were busy work, tasks that could be completed by an intern, designed to keep her occupied while stripping away everything that had made her valuable to the company. The Henderson account that she'd built from nothing, relegated to administrative coordination under Jessica's strategic leadership, "I see." Sarah's voice was carefully neutral. "And my existing client relationships will transition to direct reporting through me," Jessica replied smoothly. "It's important that our clients understand the new leadership structure. We'll be taking point on all executive-level communications moving forward." The team meeting that afternoon was a masterclass in public humiliation. Jessica stood at the head of the conference room, presenting the quarterly results for the Henderson campaign. Sarah's campaigned with the confidence of someone claiming ownership of 3 months of meticulous work. The key to this success, Jessica explained to the assembled team, was understanding that relationship building requires strategic vision, not just tactical execution. By positioning ourselves as true business partners rather than service providers, we achieved engagement metrics that exceeded all projections. Sarah sat in the back of the room, watching colleagues nod approvingly at Jessica's insights. The irony was suffocating. Jessica was literally reading from Sarah's strategy documents, presenting her analysis as original thinking. When questions arose about implementation details, Jessica deflected smoothly. "Sarah can provide you with the tactical specifics after the meeting." Tactical specifics. As if Sarah's months of relationship building were merely technical details supporting Jessica's strategic brilliance. Mike Johnson caught Sarah in the break room afterward, his expression grim with suppressed anger. "This is insane," he said quietly, checking to ensure they weren't overheard. "She's presenting your work like she developed it herself." "I know." Sarah's voice was flat with exhaustion. "But what can I do? Challenge her publicly? Create drama that makes me look like a sore loser?" "Shh. You could talk to Kate." "Kate already made her choice," Sarah interrupted. "Jessica has the relationships, the networking connections, the executive presence Kate values. I'm just the detail person who executes other people's vision." But Mike's concern ran deeper than workplace politics. Over the following days, he began sharing information that painted a disturbing picture of Jessica's systematic character assassination. She'd been spreading carefully crafted narratives about Sarah's unprofessional reaction to losing the promotion, her alleged difficulty working as part of a team, her supposed inability to see the bigger strategic picture. She told Henderson's CEO that you were struggling with the transition to collaborative leadership, Mike reported during a hushed conversation by the coffee machine. Implied that your previous success came from being territorial about client relationships rather than building sustainable partnerships. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Each revelation felt like another twist of the knife. Jessica wasn't content with simply taking Sarah's promotion. She was systematically destroying her professional reputation, ensuring that Sarah's version of events would be dismissed as the bitter complaints of someone who couldn't handle failure gracefully. The breaking point came Thursday afternoon when Sarah overheard Jessica in conversation with a manager from another department. She'd been returning from the restroom when Jessica's voice carried from an open office door. "Sarah's a good tactical resource," Jessica was saying, her tone carrying practiced concern. "But honestly, she never had what it takes for leadership. She's too focused on the weeds to see the forest. That's why she took losing the promotion so hard. She genuinely thought attention to detail was the same as strategic thinking." Sarah stood frozen in the hallway, listening to her professional obituary being written by someone who'd stolen everything from her and was now rewriting history to justify the theft. The casual cruelty of it, the way Jessica spoke about her like a problem to be managed, rather than a human being who'd been betrayed, finally broke through Sarah's shell of professional composure. That evening, she sat in her apartment, with Amanda's words echoing in her mind. Maybe it's time to stop letting other people define your worth. The documentation she'd been keeping painted a clear picture of Jessica's manipulative behavior. But she realized with growing clarity that evidence wouldn't matter. The system was rigged in favor of people like Jessica, people who played politics better than they did their jobs. Sarah stared at her laptop screen, cursor blinking in an empty document. She had two choices: continue accepting this slow motion, destruction of her professional life, or take control of her narrative in a way that Jessica couldn't manipulate or reframe. For the first time in days, Sarah smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Tomorrow, she would stop being Jessica's victim. Friday morning arrived with the crisp clarity that sometimes follows the darkest nights. Sarah woke before her alarm, her mind sharp and focused in a way it hadn't been since the promotion announcement. She dressed with deliberate care, not the armor of yesterday's navy suit, but her favorite charcoal gray dress that made her feel confident and authentically herself. Today wasn't about protection. Today was about reclaiming her power. The commute to Morrison Associates felt different. Instead of the dread that had characterized her recent mornings, Sarah felt a strange sense of anticipation. She'd spent most of the night crafting something that wasn't quite a resignation letter, wasn't quite a confrontation, but fell somewhere in between, a document that would give her back her voice in a situation where Jessica had tried to silence her completely. The morning progressed with surreal normalcy. Colleagues moved through their routines, unaware that Sarah was mentally preparing for what would likely be her final day at the company. She completed her assigned busy work with mechanical efficiency, her mind focused on the envelope in her briefcase and the conversation she planned to have before lunch. The opportunity came sooner than expected. At 10:30 a.m., Jessica emerged from her corner office with an expression of barely contained excitement, making a beeline for Sarah's desk. "Great news," she announced, her voice carrying across the open office space. "The Henderson Group wants to expand their campaign to include their catering division. Kate wants us to present a comprehensive strategy to their executive team next week." U.S. The pronoun felt like sandpaper against Sarah's nerves. "I'll need you to pull together all the operational details," Jessica continued, her tone suggesting she was offering Sarah a generous opportunity. Client preferences, contact information, previous campaign analytics. You know, the foundation work that will support the strategic presentation. Sarah looked up from her computer, meeting Jessica's eyes directly, of course. "When would you like me to have that ready?" "End of day. I know it's a tight timeline, but I have confidence in your organizational abilities." The condescension was so perfectly calibrated that Sarah almost admired its precision. Jessica had mastered the art of delivering insults disguised as compliments, of making Sarah complicit in her own diminishment. "Actually," Sarah said, standing from her desk with deliberate calm, "I think there might be some confusion about the Henderson relationship dynamics. Would you mind if we discussed this privately?" Something flickered in Jessica's surprise, perhaps at Sarah's unexpected directness. "Of course, my office." The walk to the corner office felt like a death march in reverse. Sarah wasn't walking toward her execution. She was walking toward her liberation. Behind them, she noticed Mike Johnson looking up from his computer, his expression alert with concern and something that might have been anticipation. Jessica closed the office Doran settled behind her desk with practiced authority. "What's on your mind, Sarah?" "If you're still struggling with the transition, I'm not struggling with anything," Sarah interrupted, her voice steady. "I'm resigning." The words hung in the air like a detonation. Jessica's composed expression faltered for just a moment, revealing something raw and panicked beneath her professional veneer. "Sarah, let's not be hasty. I understand this has been a difficult adjustment, but there's no adjustment." Sarah reached into her briefcase and withdrew the envelope she'd prepared. "This is my formal resignation, effective immediately." Jessica's hand trembled slightly as she accepted the envelope. Her fingers worked at the seal with uncharacteristic clumsiness. Her mind clearly racing through implications Sarah had already considered and accepted. The letter was brief but precise. "Dear Jessica, after careful consideration, I've decided to resign from my position at Morrison Associates, effective immediately. I believe it's important for me to work in an environment that aligns with my professional values and allows me to contribute meaningfully to client success. I'm confident that you'll be able to handle the Henderson account expansion using the strategic framework we discussed during your presentation preparation. I trust that your vision for collaborative leadership will serve the department well. I wish you success in your new role. Sincerely, Sarah Williams, the genius, was in what the letter didn't say explicitly while saying everything implicitly. Any colleague reading it would understand exactly what had transpired. But the language was too professional and understated for Jessica to claim it was unprofessional or bitter. Jessica looked up from the letter, her face cycling through emotions. "Too quickly to track? You can't be serious. You're going to throw away your career over wounded pride?" "I'm not throwing anything away," Sarah replied, her voice carrying a certainty that surprised even her. "I'm choosing to work somewhere that values integrity over politics." "Integrity?" Jessica's laugh was sharp and desperate. "This is business. Sarah, this is how the real world works. You can't just run away every time someone outmaneuvers you." "Is that what you call it? Outmaneuvering?" Sarah felt something cold and final settle in her chest. "You stole my work, presented it as your own, and then tried to gaslight me into believing I was the problem. That's not business strategy, that's just theft." Jessica's mask was slipping completely now, revealing the insecurity and desperation that had driven her manipulation. "You think you're better than me? You think your little spreadsheets and client phone calls make you some kind of marketing genius? I have relationships with people who actually matter. I understand how to play at levels you'll never reach." "You're probably right," Sarah said, and meant it. "I don't understand how to steal from friends. I don't know how to take credit for other people's work. I don't know how to destroy someone's reputation to cover up my own inadequacies." She stood, adjusting her purse strap with deliberate care. "But I do know how to build something authentic. I'm going to prove that integrity isn't a weakness. It's a competitive advantage you'll never understand." Or turned to Ward. The door then paused. "Oh, and Jessica. When the Henderson Group asks for the operational details of their account relationship, the contact preferences, the decision-making hierarchy, the personal touches that built their loyalty, you might want to start taking notes, because after today, I won't be available to provide you with tactical specifics." The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow sounded like victory. The office had gone quiet, the kind of silence that indicated everyone had been listening without appearing to listen. Sarah walked to her desk with her head high, gathering her personal items while colleagues watched with expressions ranging from shock to admiration. Mike Johnson caught her eye and nodded once, a gesture of respect that meant more than any words could have conveyed. 20 minutes later, Sarah Williams walked out of Morrison Associates for the last time, carrying a small box of personal items and a freedom she hadn't felt in years. Behind her, Jessica stood in her corner office, staring at her resignation. A letter that had stripped away her victory and left her with the terrifying realization that she had no idea how to actually do the job she'd stolen. The Atlanta sun felt warmer on Sarah's face as she stepped onto the sidewalk. For the first time in weeks, she was smiling, and it was genuine. The first week of unemployment felt like stepping out of a pressure cooker Sarah hadn't realized she'd been trapped inside. She woke Tuesday morning without an alarm for the first time in 3 years. Sunlight streaming through her bedroom curtains, at an angle that spoke of leisure rather than urgency. The absence of her phone buzzing with client emergencies, the silence where Jessica's manipulative voice used to intrude, it all created a space Sarah had forgotten could exist. She spent those initial days rediscovering simple pleasures. Long walks through Piedmont Park, where she watched joggers and dog walkers move through their routines with an envious sense of purpose. Coffee shops where she could sit for hours, without checking email or calculating billable time. The luxury of reading actual books instead of industry reports and client briefs. But by Thursday, the novelty was wearing thin, replaced by a creeping anxiety about her future. Sarah had always defined herself through her work, her achievements, her ability to solve problems for other people. Without that external validation, she felt unmoored, like a boat without an anchor in choppy waters. The solution came from an unexpected source, a business card she'd kept in her wallet for 2 years. Edges worn from handling but never quite discarded. Professor Robert Bob Harrison, her strategic marketing instructor from Northwestern's MBA program, had given it to her during graduation week with a characteristic drawl. If you ever find yourself ready to bet on yourself instead of someone else's vision, give me a call. At the time, Sarah had smiled politely and filed the card away, focused on proving herself within established corporate structures. Now, staring at Bob's contact information, she wondered if he'd somehow predicted this moment. The coffee shop Bob suggested in Virginia Highland felt deliberately chosen casual enough to avoid corporate pretension, busy enough to provide cover for honest conversation. Sarah arrived 15 minutes early, her nerves manifesting as obsessive menu reading and unnecessary phone checking. When Bob walked through the door, she recognized him immediately, despite the 2 years, the same confident stride, the same knowing smile that had encouraged classroom discussions while gently dismantling weak arguments. "Sarah Williams," he said, settling into the opposite chair with the easy familiarity of someone comfortable in his own skin. "You sounded ready for some serious conversation on the phone." "I wasn't sure you'd remember me," Sarah admitted, grateful for his direct approach. "Remember you, hell girl. You were one of my best students. That final project on integrated marketing for small businesses, I still use parts of it in my current curriculum." Bob's slight southern accent made everything sound conversational rather than academic. "Now what's got you looking like someone who's been through a professional tornado?" The story came out in careful, measured sentences at first, Sarah's natural discretion warring with her need to be understood. But Bob's questions were skillfully crafted, designed to elicit truth, rather than performance, and gradually the full scope of Jessica's betrayal emerged. He listened without interruption, his expression shifting from mild concern to focused attention to something that looked remarkably like satisfaction. "Well, that's a hell of a thing," he said when Sarah finished. "Reminds me of something that happened to me about 15 years ago." Bob's story unfolded with the practiced ease of someone who'd made peace with painful history. His first startup, an innovative software solution for small business inventory management, had been gaining traction when his business partner, his best friend from college, had secretly negotiated a buyout with a larger firm. Not only had Bob been excluded from the deal, but his partner had structured the acquisition to minimize Bob's stake while maximizing his own payout. "Left me broke, bitter, and convinced I'd never trust another human being in a business context," Bob continued, stirring his coffee with deliberate slowness. "Spent about 6 months feeling sorry for myself, drinking too much bourbon, and generally being a miserable son of a bitch." "What changed?" Sarah asked, recognizing something familiar in his narrative. "My wife, well, my ex-wife now, but that's another story. She asked me a question that knocked me sideways. She said, 'Are you going to let one asshole's betrayal define the rest of your professional life?' Made me realize I had 2 choices: stay a victim or use the experience as fuel for something better." Bob leaned forward, his expression intense with the passion that had made him such an effective teacher. "That betrayal taught me things about business, about people, about myself, that I never would have learned otherwise. My next startup, the one that actually made me wealthy, was built on principles I developed specifically because of what my partner taught me about the importance of clear agreements ethical leadership, and surrounding yourself with people who share your values. Sarah felt something stirring in her chest. Not quite hope, but possibility. So you're saying betrayal can be educational. I'm saying betrayal reveals character, Bob replied. Your friend Jessica showed you exactly who she is. More importantly, your response showed you exactly who you are. You walked away from financial security to preserve your integrity. That tells me everything I need to know about your potential as an entrepreneur. The word hung in the air between them, entrepreneur. Sarah had always thought of herself as someone who worked for other people, who executed other people's visions, who found security in established structures and predictable paychecks. I've been watching Atlanta's small business landscape for years, Bob continued, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd studied market dynamics extensively. There's a massive gap between what big marketing firms offer and what small businesses actually need. Companies like Morrison Associates want six-figure retainers and 18-month contracts. They push generic strategies that look impressive in presentations, don't account for the reality of running a family restaurant or a local retail shop. Sarah found herself leaning forward, her marketing mind automatically analyzing the opportunity he was describing. What do small businesses need that they're not getting? Partnership instead of vendor relationships. Strategic thinking that accounts for limited budgets and local markets. Someone who understands that for a small business owner, marketing isn't an abstract exercise. It's the difference between making payroll and closing their doors. Bob's enthusiasm was infectious, his hands gesturing as he painted a picture of underserved markets and authentic business relationships. He spent 3 years building genuine partnerships with clients at Morrison. He continued, you understand relationship-driven marketing in ways that MBA textbooks can't teach. The question is, are you ready to bet on yourself instead of hoping someone else will recognize your value? Sarah felt her pulse quickening as the possibilities took shape in her mind. She'd always excelled at understanding clients' real needs, at developing strategies that accounted for their specific challenges and opportunities. What if she could do that without corporate overhead, without bureaucratic approval processes, without people like Jessica taking credit for her insights? It's terrifying, she admitted. Good, Bob replied with a grin. If it wasn't terrifying, it wouldn't be worth doing. The question is, what scares you more, the risk of starting your own business or the certainty of spending the next 20 years making other people successful while they undervalue your contributions? As they parted ways outside the coffee shop, Bob issued a challenge that would echo in Sarah's mind for days. Don't just think about it. Do something concrete. Research the market. Identify potential clients. Sketch out a business model. Take one real step toward building something of your own, and then we'll talk about next steps. Walking back to her car, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced since before Jessica's betrayal, excitement about her professional future. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't looking backward at what had been taken from her. She was looking forward at what she might build. The seeds of renewal had been planted. Now she needed to find the courage to tend them. Bob's challenge echoed in Sarah's mind as she spent the weekend researching Atlanta's small business landscape with the methodical thoroughness that had made her so effective at Morrison Associates. Her laptop screen filled with tabs chamber of commerce directories, local business associations, industry publications that tracked small business marketing spend. What she discovered validated Bob's assessment. A significant gap between corporate marketing solutions and small business needs. The data painted a clear picture. Atlanta's small business community was thriving, but struggling with marketing effectiveness. Local restaurants competed against chain establishments with massive advertising budgets. Boutique retailers fought for visibility against online giants. Service-based businesses, law firms, accounting practices, medical offices, on referrals and outdated marketing approaches that failed to capture digital opportunities. Sarah created a spreadsheet analyzing potential market segments, projected service offerings, and competitive landscape. For the first time since her resignation, she felt the familiar thrill of strategic analysis, of identifying patterns and opportunities that others had missed. But this time the insights would benefit her own vision rather than someone else's career advancement. Monday morning brought an unexpected text from Bob. Tommy Rodriguez, Los Hermanos Restaurants. Noon today. 2847 Buford Highway. Bring your business cards. Sarah stared at the message, her stomach fluttering with nervous energy. Business cards? She didn't have business cards. She didn't have a business name, a logo, a formal structure. The prospect of meeting a potential client felt simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. The drive to Buford Highway took her through neighborhoods she'd explored in her marketing, research but never visited professionally. Los Hermanos occupied a converted house with a hand-painted sign and a parking lot filled with pickup trucks and family sedans. The building's exterior was modest, but the lunch crowd streaming through the doors suggested something special inside. Tommy Rodriguez met her at the entrance with the warm directness that characterized successful small business owners. Mid-40s, wearing a button-down shirt with sleeves rolled up, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd built something meaningful through personal effort. "You must be Sarah," he said, extending a calloused hand. "Bob speaks very highly of you. Says you understand relationship marketing better than anyone he's taught." The interior of Los Hermanos felt like stepping into someone's beloved home. Family photos lined the walls, mixed with local artwork and community event flyers. The lunch crowd, construction workers, office employees, families with children moved through their meals with the comfortable familiarity of regular customers. The staff greeted diners by name, remembered drink preferences, asked about family members. "My grandfather started this place 42 years ago," Tommy explained as they settled into a corner booth. "Just him and my grandmother, serving authentic Mexican food to whoever would try it. Now we have 4 locations and employ 38 people." Sarah pulled out her notebook, her marketing instincts automatically cataloging the environment. The authentic atmosphere, the community connections, the multi-generational story, these were assets that corporate marketing firms would struggle to understand or leverage effectively. "What's your current marketing approach?" she asked. Tommy's expression shifted to mild frustration. "We've been working with Pinnacle Marketing for 18 months. Nice people, professional presentations, but..." He gestured around the restaurant. "They keep pushing strategies that work for chain restaurants. Social media campaigns that feel generic. Advertising copy that sounds like it was written for every Mexican restaurant in Atlanta. What do you want your marketing to accomplish?" "I want people to understand that Los Hermanos isn't just a restaurant. It's a family business that's been part of Atlanta's community for decades. I want our marketing to feel as authentic as our food, as personal as the service my staff provides." Tommy's passion was evident, his voice carrying the conviction of someone who'd spent years articulating his vision to people who didn't quite understand. Sarah felt her excitement building as she recognized the exact gap Bob had described. Tommy didn't need generic marketing strategies. He needed someone who understood the story behind his business, who could translate his authentic passion into marketing approaches that honored his grandfather's legacy while appealing to Atlanta's diverse dining community. "Tell me about your customers," she said. "Not demographics, tell me about the actual people who eat here." For the next 30 minutes, Tommy painted a vivid picture of his customer base. Maria, the office manager who brought her team for lunch every Friday. The construction crew that ordered the same combination platters 3 times a week. Young families who considered Los Hermanos their neighborhood spot for birthday celebrations. Business professionals who discovered the restaurant through word of mouth and became loyal advocates. "Your current marketing firm, do they understand these relationships?" Sarah asked. "They understand customer acquisition costs and conversion rates," Tommy replied with dry humor. "But they don't understand that Mrs. Patterson has been coming here twice a week for 15 years because my grandmother remembered her late husband's favorite order." Sarah's mind was already working, identifying marketing approaches that would honor these authentic connections while expanding Los Hermanos' reach. Community-focused social media content that showcased real customers and their stories. Local partnership opportunities with schools, community organizations, and neighborhood events. Email marketing that felt personal rather than promotional. Strategic approaches to reaching Atlanta's growing Hispanic population while maintaining appeal to the diverse customer base they'd already cultivated. She said carefully. But I should be transparent. Time in the process of starting my own marketing consultancy. Los Hermanos would be my first client. Tommy leaned back in his booth, studying her with the assessing gaze of someone who'd made countless business decisions based on intuition and experience. Bob mentioned that, he also said you recently left a prestigious marketing firm because you prioritized integrity over career advancement. The way he phrased it made Sarah's resignation sound noble rather than naive. That's one way to describe it. Sarah, I've been running businesses for 20 years. I can tell the difference between someone who talks about authenticity and someone who lives it. Tommy's voice carried the weight of experience. The marketing firm we're working with now, they understand theory, but they don't understand heart. They can't market what they don't recognize. Sarah felt her confidence building as she outlined her preliminary ideas. A marketing strategy that positioned Los Hermanos as Atlanta's authentic family dining experience. Social media content that showcased the restaurant's community connections and multi-generational story. Local partnership opportunities that aligned with Tommy's values while expanding brand awareness. Email campaigns that felt like communication from a beloved neighborhood spot rather than corporate promotional messages. This sounds exactly like what we need, Tommy said when she finished. What would you charge for something like this? The question Sarah had been dreading. She'd researched competitive pricing. But naming a number felt like jumping off a cliff without knowing how far she'd fall. Corporate marketing firms charged thousands per month for comprehensive strategies. But Los Hermanos wasn't a corporate client. They were exactly the kind of business she wanted to serve. $1,200 per month for comprehensive marketing, strategy, content creation, social media management, and ongoing optimization, she said, the number feeling both reasonable and terrifying. Tommy extended his hand across the table. When can you start? The handshake felt like stepping across a threshold Sarah hadn't known she was approaching. Walking back to her car, she felt simultaneously exhilarated and terrified.
Los Hermanos
was now her client. She was officially an entrepreneur, whether she felt ready or not. Her phone buzzed with a text from Bob. How did it go? I think I just started a business, she replied. Welcome to the best, worst decision you'll ever make, came his immediate response. Now, the real work begins. Sarah sat in her car outside Los Hermanos, watching the steady stream of customers who represented Tommy's community. His legacy, his trust in her abilities. For the first time since Jessica's betrayal, she felt something she'd almost forgotten, the thrill of building something meaningful from the ground up. The seed of renewal had found fertile ground. Now she needed to help it grow. 3 weeks into her partnership with Los Hermanos, Sarah's dining room table had transformed into mission control for Williams. Marketing Solutions, a business name that had emerged from necessity when Tommy asked for an invoice. Laptops, client files, color-coded calendars, and coffee cups in various stages of emptiness covered every available surface. The familiar chaos of meaningful work had returned to her life, but this time, every late night and early morning belonged to her own vision. The results with Los Hermanos exceeded both her and Tommy's expectations. Sarah's community-focused social media strategy had increased their Instagram engagement by 180% in just 2 weeks. More importantly, the content felt authentic, real customers sharing genuine experiences. Behind the scenes, glimpses of the kitchen, where Tommy's recipes honored his grandfather's traditions. Local community partnerships that positioned Los Hermanos as a neighborhood cornerstone rather than just another dining option. We had our best week in 6 months, Tommy had reported during their Monday check-in call. But more than that, people are connecting with our story. Yesterday, a woman brought her elderly mother in because She saw our post about multi-generational family traditions. That's exactly what we wanted. Success bred visibility, and visibility bred opportunity. Tommy's enthusiasm led to conversations with other local business owners, which led to referrals, which led to Sarah's second and third clients within the same week. Maria Gonzalez, who owned a boutique clothing store in Virginia Highland, needed help competing against online retailers while maintaining her curated personal shopping experience. David Chen, a certified public accountant building his practice, wanted to reach young professionals without losing the trust-based reputation he'd built with established clients. Each new client brought unique challenges that Sarah attacked, with the analytical rigor that had made her successful at Morrison Associates, but now applied to businesses she genuinely cared about helping. The work was harder: no corporate infrastructure, no team to delegate to, no established processes to fall back on. But it was also more satisfying than anything she'd experienced in her corporate career. The coffee shop discovery happened by accident. Sarah had been working at a table near the window at Revelator Coffee, taking advantage of their reliable Wi-Fi and the creative energy that seemed to permeate spaces where other entrepreneurs gathered. She'd been deep in a competitive analysis for Maria's boutique when someone at the next table started laughing at something on their laptop screen. "Sorry," the voice said, noticing her glance. "Client just sent me the most ridiculous logo request." Apparently they want something that screams professionalism but also whispers creativity. Sarah looked up to see a man about her age, wearing a worn flannel shirt and wire-rimmed glasses. His laptop surrounded by the kind of organized chaos she recognized from her own workspace: sketchpads, color swatches, a tablet with a stylus, and what appeared to be hand-drawn logos in various stages of completion. "Graphic designer?" she asked. "Guilty as charged. Brandon Mitchell." He gestured at the logos scattered across his table. "Trying to help a law firm rebrand without looking like every other law firm in Atlanta. It's harder than it sounds." "Sarah Williams. I run a marketing consultancy." The words still felt new in her mouth, but increasingly comfortable. "And your right, legal services branding is particularly challenging. They want to appear trustworthy and established, but not stuffy or intimidating." What followed was a conversation that lasted 3 hours and fundamentally changed Sarah's understanding of what her business could become. Brandon had left his corporate design job at a large advertising agency 6 months earlier, citing many of the same frustrations that had driven Sarah from Morrison Associates. Corporate politics, taking credit for collaborative work, clients who valued flashy presentations over strategic thinking. "I got tired of designing marketing materials for clients I'd never met," Brandon explained, "creating brands that looked impressive in conference rooms but didn't connect with real people. My old agency would charge clients $15,000 for logo development that I could do better in my garage for a fraction of the cost." Their conversation revealed complementary skills and shared values that felt almost too coincidental to be accidental. Sarah's strategic marketing expertise paired naturally with Brandon's creative design capabilities. More importantly, they'd both experienced the transition from corporate disillusionment to entrepreneurial hope, understood the challenges of building authentic client relationships, shared a commitment to serving businesses that big agencies overlooked. "I have a client who needs a complete rebrand," Sarah found herself saying. "Boutique clothing store that wants to feel personal and curated without looking amateur. Are you interested in collaborating?" Brandon's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm Sarah recognized from her own recent client interactions. "Absolutely. What did you have in mind?" The collaboration with Maria's boutique became a case study in what Sarah's business could accomplish with the right creative partnership. Brandon's design work elevated Sarah's strategic vision while honoring the authentic, personal shopping experience that made Maria's store special. The new logo, website, and marketing materials felt sophisticated but approachable, professional, but not corporate, exactly the balance that had eluded Maria's previous attempts at professional branding. "This is exactly what I wanted but didn't know how to articulate," Maria said when they presented the final concepts. "It looks like my store feels personal, curated, but serious about quality." More importantly, the collaboration had revealed something Sarah hadn't expected. The creative energy that emerged when her strategic thinking was paired with Brandon's design expertise. Their approaches complemented each other naturally, each bringing out strengths in the other's work that neither could achieve alone. The professional partnership evolved into personal connection with the organic ease that Sarah had never experienced in her relationship with Jessica. Where Jessica had competed beneath the surface of their friendship, Brandon offered genuine collaboration. Where Jessica had subtly undermined Sarah's confidence, Brandon challenged her thinking in ways that made her strategy stronger. Where Jessica had taken credit for shared work, Brandon insisted on transparent attribution of their respective contributions. "I think we should make this official," Brandon suggested during their third collaborative project. Not just project-by-project partnerships, but a real creative partnership. Williams and Mitchell Marketing Solutions, or whatever we want to call it. The idea both thrilled and terrified Sarah. Partnerships had been the source of her greatest professional pain, but they'd also been the source of her recent success. The difference, she realized, was the kind of trust that had to be earned through consistent actions rather than assumed through shared history. Their growing partnership didn't go unnoticed by others in their professional network. Harrison, who'd been checking in regularly on Sarah's progress, invited them both to lunch at a restaurant in Buckhead. That clearly served as his informal meeting space for entrepreneurs he was mentoring. "You two have built something impressive in a very short time," he observed, reviewing the portfolio of work they'd completed together. "Sarah, your strategic thinking has gotten sharper since you started working with Brandon. Brandon, your design work has more strategic depth when it's paired with Sarah's analysis. It feels like we bring out each other's best work," Sarah admitted. "I understand marketing strategy better when I can see how it translates visually. And Brandon's designs are more effective when they're built on strategic foundations." "Exactly what the best partnership should do," Bob replied. "The question is, are you thinking big enough about what you're building?" The challenge Bob posed was both exciting and daunting. Instead of thinking about Williams Marketing Solutions as a solo consultancy with occasional creative partnerships. What if they envisioned it as a full-service marketing and design firm? Specifically focused on serving Atlanta's small business community? "There's a real gap in the market," Bob explained. "Big agencies want corporate clients with corporate budgets. Freelancers can handle individual projects, but they can't provide the comprehensive, ongoing support that growing businesses need. You're positioned to offer something that doesn't really exist: strategic marketing and creative services that are sophisticated enough to compete with corporate solutions, but accessible and affordable for small businesses." The conversation continued over dinner at Sarah's apartment, where she and Brandon spread out financial projections, potential service offerings, and growth scenarios across her dining room table. The vision that emerged was ambitious but achievable. A marketing and design firm that could serve as the external marketing department for businesses that couldn't afford to hire full-time marketing staff but needed more than occasional freelance support. "We'd need to hire people eventually," Brandon pointed out. "Account managers, additional designers, maybe a social media specialist." "Mike Johnson," Sarah said suddenly, "my former colleague from Morrison Associates, has been texting me about how miserable things have gotten under Jessica's leadership. He has corporate experience, understands client relationships, and I trust him completely." The prospect of expanding their team felt simultaneously exciting and terrifying. Sarah had spent her career working within established structures, following processes developed by other people, and now she was contemplating building those structures herself, creating the kind of workplace culture she'd always wanted to be part of. "Are we really talking about building a real company?" she asked Brandon as they cleaned up their planning materials. "I think we are," he replied, his smile mixing excitement with the healthy nervousness that accompanied any significant risk. "The question is, are we ready to bet on ourselves at that level?" Sarah looked around her apartment, transformed into the headquarters of a business that had grown from Bob's challenge to take one concrete step. 3 clients had become 7 clients. Solo consultancy had become creative partnership. Simple marketing services had evolved into comprehensive branding solutions. Maybe they were ready to think bigger. The momentum was building, and Sarah was finally learning to trust where it might carry them. 6 months after her dramatic exit from Morrison Associates, Sarah stood in the bright open workspace of Williams and Mitchell Marketing Solutions, watching Brandon hang the last piece of local artwork on the exposed brick walls. The converted warehouse space in Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward hummed with the energy of a business that had grown beyond anyone's initial expectations, including her own. The company now employed 7 people. Mike Johnson had joined as operations manager 3 months earlier, bringing corporate experience and the steady reliability that allowed Sfera to focus on strategic growth rather than daily logistics. They'd hired Emma Rodriguez, a recent Georgia State graduate, who specialized in social media strategy, and Marcus Thompson, a copywriter whose background in journalism brought storytelling authenticity to their client campaigns. The graphic design team had expanded to include 2 junior designers who worked under Brandon's creative direction. "Hard to believe we started this at your dining room table," Mike said, settling into one of the ergonomic chairs they'd invested. And after realizing that startup enthusiasm couldn't compensate for proper workspace furniture, "Remember when you thought $1,200 a month was a scary price," to quote. Sarah laughed, remembering those early days when every client conversation felt like a high-stakes negotiation. Now Williams and Mitchell represented 23 local businesses, from Tommy's expanding restaurant chain to a boutique law firm that had tripled their client base. Using Sarah's relationship-driven marketing strategies, revenue exceeded what Sarah had earned annually at Morrison Associates. But more importantly, every client represented a business they'd helped grow authentically. The success had attracted attention beyond their immediate client base. Atlanta Business Chronicle had featured them in an article about innovative small business services. The Georgia Small Business Association had invited Sarah to speak at their annual conference. 3 competitor firms had attempted to poach their employees with salary offers that reflected the value the market was placing on their approach. But success had also brought unexpected challenges. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday afternoon in late March, just as Sarah was reviewing quarterly growth projections with Brandon and Mike. Sarah Williams. The voice was familiar but unexpected. Catherine Stevens, her former boss at Morrison Associates. "Hope you have a few minutes to talk. I have a business proposition that I think will interest you." Sarah's stomach tightened as she gestured for Brandon and Mike to stay in the conference room while she took the call privately. Kate's voice carried the carefully modulated tone of someone delivering a prepared pitch, but underneath Sarah detected something that sounded like desperation. "I'll get straight to the point," Kate continued. "Morrison Associates has a significant opportunity with Southeastern Healthcare Systems. They're looking to rebrand their entire network, 15 hospitals, 37 clinics, complete strategic overhaul. It's a $12 million contract over 18 months. Sarah felt her pulse quicken despite her wariness. Southeastern Healthcare was one of Atlanta's largest healthcare networks, exactly the kind of client that could establish a marketing firm's reputation permanently. But the implications of Kate's call were troubling. "I'm honored that you'd think of Williams and Mitchell," Sarah said carefully. "But I'm curious why Morrison Associates would subcontract work to a smaller firm." Kate's pause was telling. "The client specifically requested you. Apparently David Chun, the CPA you've been working with, sits on their board. He's been advocating for your approach to relationship-driven marketing." The revelation both thrilled and unnerved Sarah. David Chin's accounting practice had grown by 40% under their marketing guidance, and his enthusiasm for their work had led to several referrals. But the idea that her reputation had reached Southeastern Healthcare's boardroom felt surreal. "The contract would be structured as a consulting agreement," Kate continued. "Williams and Mitchell would work as an independent contractor under Morrison's project management. You'd receive 60% of the fees. We'd handle client relationship management and administrative oversight." Sarah's marketing mind immediately started calculating. 60% of $12 million was more money than she'd imagined earning in the next 5 years combined. It would allow her to expand her team, invest in better technology, establish Williams and Mitchell as a major player in Atlanta's marketing landscape. But the arrangement would also mean working under Jessica's ultimate supervision. Since she now headed Morrison's strategic accounts division, The thought of seeing Jessica take credit for Williams and Mitchell's work, of watching her former friend present their innovative strategies as Morrison's proprietary approaches, made Sarah feel physically ill. "I need to discuss this with my partners," Sarah said, buying time to process the implications. "Of course. But Sarah," Kate's voice dropped to a more personal tone, "I want you to know that things have been challenging since you left. Jessica's management style has created some difficulties. We've lost several key accounts, and team morale has suffered. Having you back, even in a consulting capacity, would bring stability that we desperately need." The admission was more revealing than Kate probably intended. Sarah had heard rumors through industry contacts about Morrison's struggles. But Kate's words painted a picture of an organization in decline. The irony was striking. The company that had undervalued her contributions was now seeking to buy them back at premium rates. That evening, Sarah called an emergency strategy meeting at her apartment. Brandon, Mike, and Emma gathered around her kitchen table, the same space where Williams and Mitchell had been conceptualized 9 months earlier. The contrast between that uncertain beginning and their current position was stark then. They'd been hoping to survive. Now they were being asked to rescue the company that had driven Sarah away. "It's a lot of money," Brandon said after Sarah finished explaining Kate's offer. "Life-changing money, but working under Jessica's supervision." He shook his head. "That's a recipe for disaster." Mike's perspective was more complex. Having witnessed Jessica's behavior firsthand, he understood the personal dynamics involved. But his corporate experience also recognized the strategic implications of the opportunity. "The money aside," he said, "this contract would establish us as a major firm. Other healthcare systems would take notice. We'd be competing for contracts that we can't even bid on currently." Emma, who had joined the company after its founding but had quickly absorbed its culture and values, raised concerns that cut to the heart of their business philosophy. "Didn't we start this company specifically to avoid the kind of corporate politics that made Sarah miserable?" she asked. "Taking this contract means compromising our independence, working within systems that we know are dysfunctional." The debate continued for hours, each person articulating valid concerns and opportunities. The financial security was undeniable. The contract would fund their operations for years while allowing significant expansion. But the personal cost to Sarah was equally clear. Working under Jessica's authority, even indirectly, would require her to constantly navigate the same manipulative dynamics that had driven her to resign. Brandon's question finally crystallized the dilemma. What kind of company do we want to be? The kind that takes any opportunity for growth, or the kind that stays true to our original values even when it costs us? Sarah spent the following days consulting with Bob Harrison, whose advice had proven invaluable throughout Williams and Mitchell's development. His perspective was characteristically direct and unsentimental. "The money is tempting," he acknowledged during their coffee meeting. "But ask yourself this: what happens after the contract ends? You'll have worked for 18 months rebuilding Jessica's reputation, strengthening Morrison's market position, and proving that your approaches work. Then what? Do you think they'll offer you partnership? Or will they take credit for the success and move on to the next opportunity?" Bob's analysis was brutally practical. "You've built something authentic here, Sarah. Williams and Mitchell has a reputation for integrity, for putting client success ahead of internal politics. Taking this contract doesn't just compromise your values, it compromises your brand." The weekend brought unexpected clarity through an unlikely source. Tommy Rodriguez, her first client and now a close friend, invited Sarah and Brandon to a family celebration at Los Hermanos' newest location. The evening was typical of Tommy's hospitality. Multiple generations gathered around tables, sharing food and stories, creating the kind of authentic community that had made Los Hermanos successful. During a quiet moment on the restaurant's patio, Tommy asked about the consulting opportunity he'd heard Sarah discussing with her team. His response was immediate and uncompromising. "Sarah, you saved my business. It's not just the marketing. You helped me understand that staying true to my family's values was a competitive advantage, not a limitation." He gestured toward the crowded restaurant. "Every person in there tonight is here because we refuse to compromise our authenticity for growth. You taught me that." His words resonated with implications Sarah hadn't fully considered. Williams and Mitchell's client base wasn't just a collection of accounts. It was a community of businesses that had trusted her with their authentic stories, their family legacies, their personal dreams. Taking the Morrison contract wouldn't just affect her, it would signal to every current and potential client that growth mattered more than integrity. Monday morning's team meeting was shorter than expected. Sarah's decision had crystallized over the weekend, but she wanted to ensure everyone understood the reasoning behind it. We're declining the Southeastern healthcare contract, she announced. Not because it's not a tremendous opportunity, but because it's not the right opportunity for the company we're building. The relief in the room was palpable. Emma smiled. Openly, Mike nodded with approval, and Brandon's expression showed the satisfaction of someone whose values had been validated. Instead, Sarah continued, "We're going to pursue opportunities that align with our mission." Emma's been researching healthcare marketing. Specifically, there are dozens of smaller healthcare practices that need exactly what we offer. Individual clinics, specialty practices, healthcare entrepreneurs who are building something meaningful. The strategy that emerged over the following weeks was more ambitious than the Morrison contract would have been, but it was authentically theirs. Rather than serving one large client under another firm's oversight, Williams and Mitchell would become the go-to marketing partner for Atlanta's healthcare entrepreneurs. The potential revenue was comparable, but the approach honored everything they'd built. Kate's reaction to Sarah's decision was predictable, a mixture of disappointment and veiled threats about missing opportunities for growth. But her final comment revealed more than she intended. "I hope you won't regret choosing pride over pragmatism." Sarah's response was immediate and final. "I'm not choosing pride over pragmatism. I'm choosing authentic success over compromised growth. There's a difference." 3 months later, Williams and Mitchell had signed contracts with 8 healthcare practices, developed a reputation as the region's leading marketing firm for medical entrepreneurs, and been invited to present at the American Medical Association's Practice Management Conference. The success was built on their own terms, using their own methods, serving clients who valued their authentic approach. The contrast with Morrison Associates was striking. Industry reports indicated they'd lost the Southeastern healthcare contract to a firm from Nashville. Jessica's department had experienced 30% turnover, and their reputation for strategic innovation was declining rapidly. Sarah felt no satisfaction in Morrison's struggles, but she felt profound gratitude for her own choices. Walking through Williams and Mitchell's offices, watching her team collaborate on campaigns for clients they genuinely cared about, she realized that the test of success wasn't whether you could grow at any cost. It was whether you could maintain your values while building something meaningful. The betrayal that had once seemed like the end of her career had become the foundation for something better than she'd ever imagined possible. And the best part was knowing that every client, every employee, every success belonged to a company built on authentic values rather than compromised ambitions. The test of success, Sarah realized, wasn't about passing or failing. It was about choosing what kind of success you wanted to achieve. The call from the Atlanta Business Journal came on a Tuesday morning in October, 18 months after Sarah had walked out of Morrison Associates with nothing but a box of personal items and wounded pride. Emma knocked on Sarah's office door, barely containing her excitement as she relayed the message. "They want to interview you for the 40 Under 40 feature," Emma announced, her voice rising with each word. "But that's not even the best part. Williams and Mitchell has been nominated for Best New Small Business at the Atlanta Business Awards." Sarah stared at her computer screen, where quarterly reports showed revenues that had exceeded even Bob Harrison's most optimistic projections. 28 employees, 47 active clients, and a reputation that had attracted inquiries from businesses as far away as Nashville and Charlotte. The numbers were impressive, but what struck her most was the realization that she felt genuinely proud of what they'd built together. The awards ceremony was scheduled for the first Friday in November at the Marriott Marquis downtown. As the date approached, Sarah found herself experiencing an emotional complexity she hadn't anticipated. Pride mixed with lingering disbelief, excitement tempered by the surreal nature of how dramatically her life had changed. 18 months ago, she'd been devastated by professional betrayal. Now she was being recognized as one of Atlanta's most innovative business leaders. Brandon had insisted they celebrate properly, booking a table for the entire Williams and Mitchell team at the awards ceremony. "We built this together," he'd said when Sarah suggested a smaller representation. "Everyone who contributed to our success deserves to be there when we're recognized for it." The evening of the ceremony, Sarah stood in her apartment bedroom, adjusting the navy blue dress she'd chosen specifically for its professional elegance. The mirror reflected someone who looked confident and successful, but she still felt traces of the insecurity that Jessica's betrayal had instilled. The woman looking back at her had learned to trust her own judgment, to value her contributions, to build something meaningful from the ground up. But old wounds occasionally reminded her of how quickly confidence could be shattered. Amanda had driven down from Nashville to attend the ceremony, her presence providing the emotional anchor that only family could offer. She sat on Sarah's bed, watching her sister prepare for what promised to be a career-defining evening. "You know what I'm proudest of?" Amanda said, her voice carrying the weight of having witnessed Sarah's entire journey. "It's not the business success, though that's incredible. It's that you became the person you were always meant to be. The corporate environment was making you smaller, making you doubt yourself. Now you're exactly who you should be." The Marriott Marquis Ballroom buzzed with Atlanta's business elite. Sarah recognized faces from industry publications, executives from major corporations, entrepreneurs whose success stories had inspired her own journey. The Williams and Mitchell table was positioned in the middle of the room, their team looking professional and excited as they surveyed the impressive gathering. Bob Harrison had accepted Sarah's invitation to join their table. His presence both an honor and a reminder of how far she'd traveled from that coffee shop conversation that had changed her life. He surveyed the room with the satisfaction of someone who'd correctly identified potential in its earliest stages. "You know what impresses me most?" said to Sarah as they settled into their seats. "Not just that you succeeded, it's how you succeeded. You could have built a business that copied Morrison's model, competed on their terms. Instead, you created something entirely different, something that serves markets they don't understand and clients they don't value." The evening's program included several award categories before reaching the Best New Small Business announcement. Sarah found herself barely listening to the other presentations, her attention divided between nervous anticipation and observations about the other attendees. The business community that had once seemed intimidating now felt like a peer group. Fellow entrepreneurs and leaders who understood the challenges and rewards of building something meaningful. Then she saw them. Morrison Associates had purchased a corporate table near the front of the ballroom. Kate Stevens sat with other executives from the firm, their presence lending weight to whatever client relationships they were hoping to impress. And there, wearing a black cocktail dress and speaking animatedly to the person beside her, was Jessica Parker. Sarah's breath caught as she processed the implications. Jessica would be in the audience when the Best New Small Business Award was announced. If Williams and Mitchell won, Jessica would witness the success that had grown from the betrayal she'd orchestrated. The symmetry was almost too perfect to be coincidental. "You okay?" Brandon asked quietly, noticing Sarah's changed expression. "Jessica's here," Sarah murmured, indicating the Morrison table with a subtle gesture. Brandon's jaw tightened slightly, but his response was measured. "Good, she should see what authentic success looks like." The Best New Small Business category was announced by David Chen, Sarah's former client who now served on the Atlanta Business Association's board. His presence as presenter felt like another layer of meaningful coincidence. The CPA whose practice had grown dramatically under Williams and Mitchell's guidance, now recognizing excellence in small business innovation. This year's nominees represent the entrepreneurial spirit that makes Atlanta one of America's most dynamic business communities, David began, his voice carrying the authority that came from his board position. Each of these companies has demonstrated exceptional growth, innovative approaches, and meaningful impact on their communities. Sarah felt her heart racing as David read through the nominees. Williams and Mitchell was mentioned third, their description focusing on their relationship-driven marketing approach that has revolutionized How small businesses compete in Atlanta's dynamic marketplace. The words felt surreal, as if someone else's success story was being described using her company's name. The winner of this year's Best New Small Business Award, David announced, his smile widening as he opened the envelope, is Williams & Mitchell Marketing Solutions. The ballroom erupted in applause. Sarah felt Brandon's hand squeeze her shoulder, heard Emma's excited cheer, saw Bob Harrison's proud smile. But what she noticed most was the moment of shocked recognition that crossed Jessica's face as she processed the company name and connected it to the woman she'd dismissed as unqualified 18 months earlier. Walking to the podium felt like traversing the distance between who she'd been and who she'd become. The applause continued as Sarah accepted the Crystal Award, its weight substantial in her hands. She looked out at the audience, seeing faces that represented different aspects of her journey, clients who'd trusted her with their dreams, employees who'd chosen to build something meaningful alongside her, mentors who'd provided guidance when she needed it most. "Thank you," she began, her voice steadier than she'd expected. 18 months ago, I left a job that I thought defined my worth as a professional. I was devastated, hurt, and convinced that my career was over. Sarah's eyes found Jessica in the audience, seeing the complicated expression that crossed her former friend's face as the story's implications became clear. What I learned is that betrayal, while painful, can become the catalyst for building something better than what you lost. Williams & Mitchell exists because I was forced to discover what I was truly capable of when I stopped letting other people define my value. She gestured toward her table, where her team watched with proud expressions. This company succeeds because we've chosen to build our reputation on integrity, authenticity, and genuine care for our clients' success. We've proven that you can compete at the highest levels without compromising your values. The speech continued for another few minutes, focusing on gratitude for clients, employees, and mentors who'd supported Williams & Mitchell's growth. But Sarah's most meaningful moment came when she looked directly at Jessica and spoke words that weren't in her prepared remarks. To anyone who has ever been told they weren't qualified, who has ever had their contributions dismissed, or their trust betrayed, your worth isn't determined by other people's recognition. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is being forced to bet on yourself. The applause was thunderous. Sarah returned to her table feeling emotionally drained, but profoundly satisfied. She'd said what needed to be said, acknowledged the journey that had brought her to this moment, and done so with grace rather than bitterness. The evening continued with networking and celebration. Sarah found herself in conversations with potential clients, industry peers, and other award winners who'd built successful businesses through innovative approaches. The recognition was gratifying, but what struck her most was the realization that she belonged in these conversations, that her insights and experiences were valuable to others navigating similar challenges. Near the end of the evening, as Sarah was saying goodbye to Bob Harrison, she noticed Jessica approaching. Her former friend looked composed but uncertain, her usual confidence replaced by something that might have been humility. "Congratulations," Jessica said, her voice lacking its typical performative warmth. "Your speech was impressive." Sarah studied Jessica's face, looking for signs of the manipulation that had once been invisible to her. But what she saw instead was someone who appeared genuinely diminished, whose confidence had been shaken by witnessing the success that had grown from her betrayal. "Thank you," Sarah replied simply. There was nothing more to say. The woman who had once been her closest friend had become a stranger, and the conversation that might have provided closure felt unnecessary. Sarah had already found her closure in the success she'd built, the relationships she'd cultivated, the values she'd refused to compromise. As the evening wound down, Sarah stood with Brandon and Amanda outside the Marriott, watching Atlanta's skyline sparkle in the November night. The city that had witnessed her devastation had also witnessed her triumph, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude for both experiences. "So what's next?" Amanda asked, her pride evident in her voice. Sarah considered the question, thinking about the opportunities that success had created, the expansion possibilities that were already being discussed, the clients who'd expressed interest in Williams and Mitchell's approach. But what came to mind wasn't strategic planning or growth projections. It was the simple satisfaction of building something meaningful with people she trusted and respected. "More of the same," she said, surprising herself with the answer. More authentic relationships, more businesses help to tell their stories. More proof that success built on integrity lasts longer than success built on shortcuts, Brandon's smile reflected his understanding of what she meant. "The best revenge is living well." "It's not about revenge," Sarah replied, looking back at the hotel where Jessica was probably still networking, still playing the political games that had once seemed so important. "It's about building something better than what you lost." As they walked toward their cars, Sarah felt the weight of the award in her hands and the lightness of someone who'd transformed betrayal into the foundation for something greater than she'd ever imagined possible. The circle was complete. But the story was just beginning. Williams and Mitchell had been recognized as Atlanta's best new small business. More importantly, Sarah Williams had been recognized by herself as someone worthy of betting on. The transformation was complete. The future was unlimited. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. The mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.